Bismillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's an honor to be here sharing this with you all. My name is Musab Penfound. I'm from Manchester, England, currently in Scandinavia and living in Tarim, Hadramaut. So I was asked to share a few thoughts, a few reflections, and given a pretty interesting title, The Future of Hearts. Often when people talk about the heart, it's related to a spiritual tradition. It's normally to do with the present. But I thought it was an interesting juxtaposition in the very title. In my own experience as a convert to Islam, as somebody that came from a very different worldview and is still on a journey of embracing that reality, I've always found it really interesting to see how Muslims view the world. And I think what's really important, and I'd like to reflect a bit upon, is the way that we see the world and the lens that we use in order to see it, and how we use that lens, how we get in contact with that lens. Often due to understandable and excusable reasons, we've got ourselves into almost like a rut where we see the rest of the world through a purely political, socio-economical paradigm. And I think what's really important is that we really start to, if we're going to progress and really leave like a legacy to future generations, we're going to have to hone it in on a more accurate paradigm, and it's going to have to come to something which is a bit more healthy, a bit more positive, and ultimately really the narrative is not defined for us. The Prophet ﷺ, he narrated is narrated by Imam Ahmed that إذا قام على أحدكم القيامة وبيده أو في يده فصيلة فليغرسها. If the hour comes, Armageddon's on the way, it's the last day, and you're in the middle of planting a seed, then keep planting. And within this prophetic narrative, it's showing us, irrespective of what we may perceive to be like an inundation of enmity or an active dismantling of something which we hold very, very dear to us, our tradition, our Prophet ﷺ, people spill. Keep on doing what you're doing. Don't be distracted by that, because that's not your narrative. And I think in terms of why this is of absolute centrality to the heart, is because it's alluded to in the tradition where the Prophet ﷺ said, "Inna fil jasadi la mudgha." Indeed, in the body there's like a clump of flesh. And he is referring to the physical heart in this reality, but also alluding to something of its mystical, unseen reality and the implications of it. إِذَا صَلَحَت صَلَحَ جِسْمُ كُلُّهُ. If it becomes rectified, if it becomes cultivated, if you tend to this faculty within your being, صَلَحَ جِسْمُ كُلُّهُ, the entirety of your being thus becomes rectified. The entire body becomes healthy. وَإِذَا فَسَدَتْ فَسَدَ الْجِسْمُ كُلُّهُ أَلَا وَهِيَ الْقَلْبُ. And if it becomes corrupted, foul, putrid, neglected, then so too does the entire body. Now, if we're talking about the body as an extension to ourselves, often it's quoted from Rumi that yesterday I was clever. I was a smart guy. I was clever. So I wanted to change the world. But today I'm wise, so I've decided to take charge of my own self, to change myself, to rectify myself. And often, I think, amongst the youth, it can seem like a real disempowering thing. Like you just got to be kind of like some kind of like abstracted, spiritualized person that actually has no real active, proactive engagement within the society. And the reality is the absolute opposite. But what it's saying is that this is the prophetic strategy for being absolutely active, for being truly a conduit for change, a conduit for influence. You've got to take care of yourself. You've got to weed out those discrepancies and ailments within the heart, such as envy, such as arrogance, such as all of these kind of things. And this is the baseline. This is the foundation. And were this not to be the case, then the greatest reference that we have, the archetypal, source of beauty, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he wouldn't have spent those formative years training, cultivating those blessed people around him upon this reality. Being people who know the realities of devotion, who we're aiming for. I think a lot of the feeling of disempowerment comes because people feel that they're locked into this linear understanding of the world of oppression, the world of unfairness, the world of absence of justice. And when we root ourselves and to know, inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un, we're for and we're from Allah, and unto Him we're returning back. This is now coming much closer to a far more authentic and nabawi, prophetic worldview, which is absolutely empowering, And I think, what we need to do on a practical level, we need to tend to our hearts, tend to our families, tend to our communities, and this will have a spiritual ripple effect upon the society. It's enticing, and it's one of the real things that the ego loves to relish in. It has a large appetite for when we're told to take on Goliath, but the Goliath is within us. Within us, we need to be really attentive to the mayulat and the inclinations and the things that we incline towards or incline away from, and really have our sights focused on the goal. I think cultivating the heart, in my experience and what I've seen in terms of just visiting various communities worldwide, is when it becomes heart-centric, it's empowering in that people, it's like singing, as you say, you're singing from the same hymn sheet. There's a reality to a collective consciousness that if our hearts are connected towards the goal in the right way, according to the correct, healthy, holistic methodology, then we can start to not hate on one another. Why are they doing? We're on the same team, and if we have hearts which are filled with, potentially with envy or conceit or pride and these kind of things, all this is going to do is going to stint our growth, and it's not going to lead to a healthy and vibrant future. We need people who are dynamic in our ummah. We need people, on all sides. There's a diversity within the great breadth of the ummah in the way that we think, in the way that we act, in the way that we behave, and all of it is on this great umbrella of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in his teachings. But the expression for and the scope for diversity is almost one of the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the differences in your tongues. This is something to celebrate, and something we're to use it in order to call to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a way which is authentic and which is genuine and which is ultimately pleasing to Him. I think it's important to really to look through the lens of the heart, because by it everything, it's not just an empty kind of moralistic virtual theory that we have for the religion. It's not just how to be a good guy. We need good people, but true goodness in our tradition is something where you have an outward expression of character or behavior, but it's rooted and it's internalized through the power and the focus of intentionality. وَنِيَّةَ الْمُؤْمِنِ خَيْرًا مِنْ عَمَلِهِ. The intention of the true believer is greater than the actual works that they do. And anything that we can do is always going to fall short, but the orientation of our souls, if it's back to the divine, if it's seeking the good pleasure of Allah and closeness to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then it's going to have a transformative effect, even if what we have to hand is not that much. The people used to mock Nuh alayhi salam, Prophet Noah. He's got this old bits of wood and rusty nails to get together. Your claim is going to be this big flood, But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَحَمَّلْنَاكُمْ فِي الْجَارِيَةِ. We were the ones that carried them. So whilst we don't fall short in taking the outward manifest means. Similarly, we don't fall short in rectifying the inward edifice, that kind of, and tending to that inward architecture, which the Prophet ﷺ had laid down over 1400 years ago. You know, so much of the decisions and the strategies of the Prophet ﷺ, you know, it was based upon this broader prophetic vision, which doesn't just look to, well, we need to be a bit more productive, we need to be a bit more effective, we do, but not to the detriment of harming people's souls or hurting people's feelings or breaking people's hearts. And this is a really important essence of our tradition. We need to cultivate, you know, future generations upon this, that people are empowered. You know, you have a lot of people now that are almost, you know, up in arms about the nature of climate change and the environment, and as, you know, claimants to be to a custodianship of this reality, not just because it's nice to do so we can live in a better world. That's not our tradition. It's far deeper. That the trees have a right, that the animals have a right, that the skies have a right, and we're in custodians. We're also there to maintain and serve all of creation. This is part of the prophetic teachings, and a lot of people feel tremendously unfulfilled because it comes from this place of lack of, you know, they don't feel empowered that they can change anything, you know. And I think everyone has a role to play. You know, what's sad now is we, you know, because we're often defined by how many likes or, you know, the nature of our followship. You know, to be a follower, it's you know, it's an accolade in Islam, not necessarily to be the one that's followed. And, you know, what are you being followed in? All of these subtle things which are cultivating and conditioning our hearts and our souls, and we're not even necessarily aware of it. It's doing something to our psyche, to our mentality, to the way that we view the world, to the way that we perceive ourselves. You know, the Prophet ﷺ empowered the people around him, you know, to carry on this tradition, this legacy for future generations, to have the gift of self-knowledge, to know who you are. مَنْ عَرَفَ نَفْسَهُ فَقَدْ عَرَفَ رَبَّهُ. The one that knows themselves, they know Allah. The more in tune we are, not just, you know, ingratiating, you know, with ourselves, the luxuries and the impulses and the appetites, that's actually a veil. And that's one of the reasons why many of us feel completely unfulfilled in where we're at. You know, and I think, you know, the doctors of the world, the engineers, the mechanics, the strategists, the politicians, everyone needs to be, if we gravitate towards this central meaning, then we're authentically an ummah, with this collective body of souls united in this reality of collective consciousness, and we're heading somewhere. You know, we're on a journey. And, you know, the future on an individual level, we should always be mindful of. You know, sooner or later we're going to leave this earth, we're going to transition into a different place. And what kind of legacy do we want to leave behind, and what do we want to take with us? You know, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ وَإِنَّمَا لِكُلِّ امْرِئٍ مَا نَوَىٰ. Actions are purely and solely rooted and governed and verified by their intentions. The intentionality, the reason, your agenda, your motive behind that which you do, even if it seems good, is ultimately judged and ultimately only real in accordance to the reality of the intention which fuels it. You know, وَإِنَّمَا لِكُلِّ امْرِئٍ مَا نَوَىٰ, and everyone shall get that which they have intended. You know, so we need to also be people if we're going to authentically attach and connect and really dissolve ourselves into this great tradition of, you know, a prophetic vision, a prophetic paradigm. It's for the long term. It's not just within this life. How do we want to, the ramifications of what we do in this life impact and resonate throughout our eternity? These are real things. You know, how many people think they're going to, you know, we all have this kind of like, I'm probably going to live to around 70 or 80. And how many people do every single one of us know that they died far sooner than anyone would have expected, you know, them to go? It was written. You know, we have to be mindful of these things. And, you know, it's not to sound morbid or kind of, but really it's, once again, it's empowering. If we're active in the present, then we have an accurate diagnosis for our condition, and we can, you know, work on a prescription. You know, I think a lot of the time, some of the challenges in thinking about the future as a Muslim is because we don't really know who we are, where we're going. We haven't got anything to really stand upon. And what a focus and a heart-centric approach does, constantly scrutinizing one's own intentions and one's agendas and one's motives, cultivating one's character, cultivating one's speech. This is the most empowering thing. This isn't just like a nice spiritual thing to do on the side. What this does is it fuses anything that you do, any projection that you have, anything that you have to give and serve, the world with, and it with something which is absolutely real and truly influential. These are the real influences. The people, they don't need the marketing strategies. They don't need those kind of things. They're people that are locked into a deeper reality, connected to a deeper reality. And we need to be connected to these people, the inheritors of this tradition, the inheritors of that which the Prophet ﷺ bequeathed to every single one of us. And we're a tradition which is about accessibility. We need to make these things accessible, May Allah make the future beautiful. And they say if you really want to cultivate the future, then you look within and you look in the present time. What are you cultivating now? That's what you're going to reap within the short, mid-term, and long-term future. So may Allah allow us to be people of presence, to understand the beauty of presence, to understand the beauty of being mindful and conscious of our own words and of our behavior and of our actions. And, may Allah make us people that truly serve Him and His beloved Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Some of the most beneficial of people, or the dearest of people rather to Allah, those which are anfa'ahum li'ayalih, people of real benefit to His dependence, the dependence of Allah. And this doesn't just say the Muslims. We need to be people who are bastions of just goodness. People often they don't look at the details. What vibe are you giving off? You could be projecting or publicizing or promoting oneself in a particular way, but in looking at the heart, that's what people are able to read. People are able to read something which comes from a much deeper faculty within every single one of us. And they need to see goodness, they need to see light, they need to see sincerity. We need to move away from, hypocritical, institutionalized, ways of being, modes of being, and we need to really start to keep it real. People are in need. People are in real need. Alhamdulillah, there was a lady which took her shahada last night here. And, just people are searching. You can see in people's journey, we need to be conduits just to, to have the magnanimity, just to open up to people. And we can only do that if we've worked upon our hearts and we're able to cradle these gifts, which ultimately we've been given. None of us have ever earned or we're not deserved of. But we can carry it and bear it with humility and with insight and with wisdom and with passion and with beauty. This is a legacy, and this is the legacy of the Prophet ﷺ, the one that would spend every single night weeping for his ummah out of care. May Allah make us people of care. May Allah make us people of sincerity. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to be in tune with our hearts, to have pure hearts, and ultimately, for the future of this ummah in this world to be a future of beauty and prophetic beauty. And when we're all raised on the day in which neither wealth nor progeny shall avail except illa man atallah bi qalbin salim, except for the one that comes to God with a sound, cultivated, rectified heart. May Allah allow us to be people of vision, and may Allah bless this work and every single person which has contributed towards it, and be a means and a conduit to spread all of this throughout the globe. The times now and the time we're really in need. The ummah is in need, and we're all in need, and we need to work together as a team, to our hearts being connected upon this reality. وبالله التوفيق وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين.